Happy birthday to Tevin. Happy birthday from the Doug Stewart Show. And there you have it. Those are the birthdays. And you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show. A couple quick little stories. Well, I just wanted to make mention. Did y'all notice that several of the Falcons players, they had on the reptile warm-up hoodies before the game on Sunday night? That's right. A couple of cats have already worn them earlier this year, Ezekiel Elliott and Odell Beckham. But safety and defensive back Jalen Collins actually brought the hoodies to the secondary as a Super Bowl gift, and they wore them before the game. You know, kind of stylish or whatever, man. You expect that type of thing out of Odell Beckham Jr. and Ezekiel Elliott. They seem kind of flamboyant-ish, to put it lightly. But the Falcons, man, and that's another thing that they had going for them in that game is the young play, especially on that defense, like Jalen Collins and Devondre Campbell and Deion Jones, man, they got a little swagger to them, a little style about themselves, man. And Jalen Collins made a couple of big tackles early in the game, and wearing designer warm-up hoodies before the game, it was cool. And so they would have probably just got a bunch of organic fans from this thing if they would have won, man, and they just pissed it all away. And last thing I wanted to mention, and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show, that's something else before I move on to the XFL talk. That's something else that hadn't been talked about a lot is the fact that the Falcons didn't have Desmond Trufant this year, and Jalen Collins got a lot of playing time, man, at defensive back. So what happens when Desmond Trufant, the number one corner for the Falcons, number one draft pick, made it to the Pro Bowl a couple of times, he tore, what did he tear, his rotator cuff or bicep or something? He tore something in his upper body, and so he had been done midway through the season this year. When Trufant comes back next year, okay, when Trufant comes back, then you're going to have Jalen Collins probably going to the nickel. I guess he would move down. And then you'd have the Brian Poole kid probably fighting to make the roster. And the Brian Poole kid was good this year. I mean, from what I saw. And I think they have him listed as a safety as well. But he played defensive back nickel this year for the Falcons, man, out of Florida. Another guy Dan Quinn knew of because of Florida ties, from what I understand. But the Falcons' defense should even get better when Trufant gets back. But we're going to move on from that. One quick thing I wanted to mention, man. Last night, I saw it about a week late. I was able to watch the 30 for 30 on the XFL. This was the XFL! Yeah. Man, and I said it when we first talked about it when it was premiering on ESPN. But I really, really was rooting for the XFL, man. I thought the whole concept was real cool. I learned a bunch of different little, small things about what happened and how Vince McMahon and Dick Ebersol, head of NBC at the time, man, tried to put together this product of football that was, different than the NFL, the non-fun league or the no-fun league they call the NFL. And real cool little documentary. It wasn't great. Like, it wasn't like the Allen Iverson documentary or the one on the University of Miami or the Bad Boys or anything like that. But, I mean, it was solid. It was pretty decent. I really rooted for the XFL to succeed, man, because I'm, me, my personality. I like to have fun. I like exciting things. I like showmanship. I like cats dancing in the end zone. I like Deion Sanders stepping from the 20-yard line, for a pick six. I like that type of thing. Yeah, I like showmanship. And the NFL for the longest time, and this kind of, highlighted the fact that the NFL wants you to be a robot out there, and they want you to look alike, and they want you to dress alike, and they want you to be monotone, and they don't want you to have an opinion, and they don't want you dancing in the end zone. They don't want you talking trash to somebody. I mean, I hated that for a long time. And the XFL, man, it promised to be the total opposite. Vince McMahon brought this whole, wrestling persona to the league. The new uniforms were cool. And I just wish that it worked. Now, something they didn't budget on, I guess the main story of this is that, they just didn't have good enough players, which I find shocking because there's a lot of great players that don't make it to the NFL that could play. There's just not enough room for them in the NFL. So I don't know if they didn't do a good job of selecting the right players or what, or maybe the coaching was bad, maybe the time frame that they had to practice and get ready for the season wasn't long enough or what. But I was really rooting, and something else that really jumped out at me about that documentary, man, is it reminded me of why I hate Bob Costas. It reminded me why I cannot stand Bob Costas. True professional, but to a fault. He did the interview with, and I remember this happening at the time. He did the interview with Vince McMahon. And, Vince McMahon is a wrestling cat. He's loud. He screams. He grew up in that lifestyle, made his money in wrestling and all of the over-the-top things that wrestling does. And basically, in this interview with Bob Costas, who was a part of the network in which the XFL came on, Bob Costas basically ambushed him. In relative terms, that's the term they use in this industry. He ambushed him. He tried to make him look bad. He cut his knees from under him, and talking about the product and how bad it was and this. And so Bob Costas' thing was, and I understand, but the way that he went about it was just bad. Bob Costas had this pristine image of this perfect journalist guy. And these journalists, a lot of time, being in this industry, I can tell you this, and listening to the Doug Stewart Show. These journalists, a lot of these journalists, not all, but a lot of these journalists, they think way too much of themselves. They do. And so Bob Costas thought it was beneath him. He thought that it was beneath him to be a part of the XFL and anything to do with Vince McMahon. And this snooty, highfalutin, bougie term we've been talking about around here for the last couple of days, this real bougie arrogance and attitude with himself and towards Vince McMahon and to the XFL. And in this interview, man, he just cut Vince McMahon's knees from under him. And it was bad, man, and it was bad. And I've never been a Costas fan ever since then. And I always talk about how, that attitude is very prevalent in this industry. When I used to work at the other radio station with the Stews, when the Stews were the Stews, some of my coworkers, I'm not going to name them, some of my coworkers, even though this is just talk radio, we ain't no freaking real journalists of no newspaper or anything like that. Stop it. But these cats had such a bad, negative conversation and thoughts on Chris Berman. Chris Berman, all he is a shtick, and, he's a fake, and this, that, and the other, and I hate Chris Berman. Why do they show him so much love? Why do they give him so much responsibility at ESPN? You know why? Because Chris Berman, love him or hate him, had personality. And that's something that our agent used to always tell us, man. A lot of these cats forget on radio and on TV, they forget that their job title is radio or TV personality. Okay? And Chris Berman wouldn't have been able to be around for 30, 40 years at ESPN if he wasn't good at what he did. So I've always been a fan of personality. And the Stews had personality. And a lot of people in the industry, they hate people on radio and TV with personality. It's dumb. It's dumb. I mean, it's really stupid to me, but it reminded me, the big thing I took out of the XFL documentary is the reason why, and I forgot about it, it's been so long. That was in 2000, I think the first year of the league, and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show, was 2001. But it reminded me of why I have such disdain for Bob Costas. He think his shit don't stink. Right. He think his doo-doo don't stink. How dare. And he even talked about it in this XFL thing. It's a documentary, so I'm not spoiling it. It's been out for a couple of weeks. I know a lot of y'all hate when I tell details of a TV show or a movie. But they interviewed him today. And he talked about it. He had this his nose up in the air. Like, I would never talk with Jim McMahon. I would never have anything to do with the XFL, an inferior league, inferior football. What? Come on, man, bro. Stop it, man. You think way too much of yourself. But I thought it was pretty good, man. I thought it was pretty decent. 404-382-0338. You can also email me at Doug@theDougStewart.com. From Mr. Harper in the chat room on Spreaker.com. He says, come on, Doug. We all know that them folks were nothing but jealous. Yeah. Jealousy. And that's basically what it comes down to as far as the hate towards Chris Berman, the hate Bob Costas showed toward Jim McMahon. The hate that a lot of people in the industry shows toward the Stews. Maybe that's what you're talking about, Mr. Harper. Right. We're going to have a good time doing this no matter what. And me in particular now because Ryan's retired and plays golf 7 days a week. So I'm going to have a good time doing it, period. And always taking that side of things and that opinion that I'm going to have a good time. And rightfully so, not take myself too serious. This is about the players. This is about the teams. This is about the games. It ain't about me and my highfalutin, way of seeing life. From loose-neck, crappy hunter side, my classmate and neighbor played in the XFL. He was an All-American from Florida State, Clifton Abraham. I remember that name. He didn't get a shot in the NFL because of his size, but he jumped at the chance to play in the XFL. He had the name Lil Buddy on the back of his jersey and got a pick six in an XFL game. We roasted the ish out of his ass for the name, but he got a check. Yeah, and they were making like $4,000 a game. Going from not playing football at all, for the rest of your life, to playing professional football to whatever level it is, even the Arena League is big. And then you making $4,000 a check for playing football? That's big. I remember when and you're listening to the Doug Stewart Show, one of my frat brothers, one of my chapter brothers, his son was a senior this year. And he went to, what's the name in high school? It doesn't even matter. Oh, Peachtree Ridge. And his son's like a, all-state type player. And he's kind of like in between as far as, size and where he could play, what level of football he could play in college football. And the last game that they played this year, in which they lost to Roswell, and I was at the game. I mean, when they lost, man, it just reminded me of when I lost my last high school game. A lot of kids, man, they don't realize it till after it's over that the last time they're going to touch a football field, man, is in high school. Many more, their last game they're going to play is in college, whatever level it may be. And to put on a helmet again and get on a football field, at whatever level, somebody paying you a check to play football? I mean, I'm nothing but a fan of that. I mean, how could you not be a fan of that? And I mean, Bob Costas just had this attitude. Like, how dare you try to play football? And it was this big thing, kind of like, not really competition, but quasi-talk of competition between whatever league, in this particular case, the XFL against the NFL. Like, he was like a shill for the NFL. Like, why? It can't be more than one football league? I mean, hell, they got Burger King and Wendy's. McDonald's isn't the only fast food place. Like, anything's a threat to the NFL. And the NFL wound up taking a bunch of their, innovative things that they did in the league as far as how they film the game and the play on the field and all of that type stuff, man. It's just bootleg as hell, man. The attitudes of some of these media people. It trips me out every time I think about it. When we get back from the break, man, let's talk a little bit of basketball. Hey, New York Knicks fans. Hour number 3 of the Doug Stewart Show, the Power Hour. Coming up next.